Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to the Non-Binary Elephant Podcast election special. No surprises, really, Jay?
Absolutely none.
I didn't even introduce you then.
No,
just Jay,
didn't,
just like everyone knows who you are. This is Jay, my brother. I'm Gareth, by the way. I didn't even introduce myself. Yeah, no surprises at all. Certainly not from me.
No, not at all. It's just shows that, people are completely out of touch with what the people actually think. And Labour have ignored their heartlands for so long, and they've suffered. And Joe Swinson on the side of a bus is amusing now, isn't it?
Well, this is the thing as well in terms of Joe Swinson. Like I said at the time, I think during the interview that we did with Toto, the Labour activist, that people had completely misread her popularity.
Yeah, massively.
She's a very unpopular person.
She is. But
she's not who you want on the side of a bus.
They position themselves as the anti-Brexit, just stop it party, and I think they banked on the fact that a lot of the 16 million that voted Remain would vote for them because they were kind of the only party, along with the Greens, that did that. Yeah. And it's backfired.
It's backfired because most people, the silent majority, most people that obviously either voted Leave or voted Remain, but have a bit of honour and go, well, honour the result.
Yeah, absolutely, democracy.
Yeah, exactly. And the thing for me, I look at it in a real simple way. So you've had a vote where the majority of the country, in the largest ever democratic vote the country's ever had, the largest ever in terms of number,
massively,
has voted for something. So then when you, in the next sort of two general elections along, you position yourself to be anti that.
Yeah. That
to me is like just pure mathematics. Is just insanity.
It is absolute insanity. It's also very sad to see the anti-Semitism in Finchley and Golders Green by not voting Berger in.
No,
It's disgusting, isn't it?
Yeah, well, all that lot.
Can you define that lot?
That pulled the coup. So you've got Gapes, you've got
just
Berger.
So we don't get anyone trying to say that lot means something.
You got Chucker. They're all gone.
Yep,
they're all gone.
Chucker Amuna, the arrogance of him, and it's as much as we don't believe in the fact that democracy in this country works, them lot have been smashed in the ballot box where it matters. So it's hilarious.
Well, of course there's because on one level, like obviously on a political level, they're anti-democracy, which is ridiculous. But on a personal level, they're not very likeable people.
No, they're not. Did you see through the night when Swinson lost their seat first, and then there was the trending that Berger would be the new leader, and then she lost.
And then she's gone. Yeah, yeah.
Hilarious. Anyway, we're going to get into that and probably a lot more. You've probably heard as much as you'll hear from us for the rest of the podcast because we've got Dad, David Icke, coming on. So I'm sure we won't.
Is it the first time we've ever done it with with Dad?
It is.
Yeah. I might go out and make a cup of tea. I'll be back in half an hour.
Yeah, no one would notice. Right, welcome on the podcast for the very first time,
Dad.
There you go. We've got 3 Ikes speaking now.
Oh dear.
I was going to say 3 generations, but not quite that old.
Not quite that old, no.
So, some people will be shocked of what's happened overnight. I think most people that actually follow politics won't be.
No.
Because you can't ignore what people say and people want for as long as the Labour Party have and expect to get away with it. So what's your immediate reaction on what's happened overnight?
What we've seen here, guys, is Donald Trump in 2016. And I don't support Trump, certainly don't support the Democrats, and I don't support Boris Johnson, and I don't support Jeremy Corbyn or any of them. I'm looking at this from a people's perception and reaction point of view. What happened in America in 2016 is that the working class, and what they call in America the middle class, had reached the point where it had had enough because the main parties had ignored them decade after decade. America was run from New York, from Los Angeles, from Washington and the coasts, and everything in middle America was forgotten. Just, they don't matter. And Trump came along and started articulating their concerns, the fact that they had been ignored. And he started talking their language. And you can say, oh, he did it for political reasons. I'm sure to a large extent he did, because that was a massive constituency for him to tap into of we've had enough. And they put him in against all the apparent odds. What's happened in Britain is precisely the same in its theme. The working class, as they're called, and the urban populations of Britain in the cities that for as long as I've been alive and before have been strongholds for the Labour Party, because the Labour Party stands for the working man, as the old mantra used to go. Well, it doesn't anymore. And what has happened is that over decades, not least when Tony Blair took over the Labour Party, the so-called working men in Britain and women of Britain had no party representing them, just as they didn't in America. Neither the Republicans or the Democrats were representing them. And this has festered, and people have got more and more angry as their lives have been ignored and their concerns and struggles have been ignored. And there was really not a lot they could do about it up to recent times, because you were voting for parties and not changes, and therefore it was the usual story. The Labour Party candidates would come along and they would tell all those people that they claim to represent, or we'll do this, we'll do that. They never did. And the Labour Party retreated and retreated into a metropolitan bubble around London, the only reality they could understand anymore, overwhelmingly. But still, who are you going to vote for? You can't vote Tory if you're working class. But something changed, which led to what we've seen in this election, and that was the Brexit referendum. For the first time, people in the urban centres and others could have a say, not by voting for a party that told them one thing and went away and did another, but an absolutely clear decision. Do you want to stay in the European Union, or do you want to leave? And in vast numbers, they left. They said, we want to leave. And I posted something on the internet within an hour of that referendum, which is fantastic, but this is just the start, because they ain't going to go quietly. As we've seen, referendums have been overturned throughout the history of the European Union when the people have given the decision the bureaucrats in Brussels didn't want them to make. So what has transformed politics in certainly in this election is that this ignored constituency of people, particularly in the urban centres of Britain, then watched the party that claims to represent them, the Labour Party, do everything it can and could to stop that referendum result being implemented. They watched the Liberal Democrats and the Greens and the Scottish National Party conspiring together with the Labour Party to block any vestige at all of Brexit that was voted for. And with Corbyn, he came into power as leader of the Labour Party in a tidal wave within the party of optimism and support. And if you remember, he was going to be different. So he turns up for his first question time in Parliament, in the House of Commons, in a non-dark suit jacket, the kind of stuff that he would wear as a backbench MP and going about his life. None of this MP dark suit stuff. And that was basically the high point of Jeremy Corbyn standing for being different. Soon the dark suit was on, and he started to retreat back into the political bubble of the Labour Party. And although he has been, through his political career, an opponent of the European Union, he started being absorbed into the Blairite belly of the Labour Party, which wanted to stop Brexit. And because he didn't really want to stop Brexit, but he hadn't got the backbone to stand up against it, he then got pulled into this in the middle of nowhere, no man's land position of complete confusion, which reached the point in the end of, well, yeah, well, we'll have a second referendum if we get in, and maybe, and people were looking at that and saying, you're supposed to represent us. We voted years ago now, 17.4 million to leave the EU, and you are playing a major part, which you did in the end, of stopping that happening. What this Brexit situation has done, and the anger and the frustration that comes from how that referendum result has been ignored and abused, is that for the first time in their lives, a lot of people have voted Conservative, who are normally solid Labour voters. And the other thing that's happened is that, there is a seed change taking place, fellas, in the minds of so many people. They are starting to reassess a lot of things. And they have looked at this whole Brexit attempt to stop it. And they've looked at those involved. And the Labour Party has been rejected. But so has the Liberal Democrats. And this lady, Jo Swinson, the leader of the Liberal Democrats, well, until this election, who lost her seat. And they thought, the Liberal Democrats, that because they were vehemently anti-Brexit, if we get in, we're just going to ignore it. They thought that would pull in all the voters or the Remainers who wanted to stay in the EU. Oh, they'll support us now because we say we're going to ignore the referendum. But people look at that, and the great unwashed are not as bloody stupid as this political class thinks they are. And they've thought, what a turncoat, or a better word, what a manipulation, what a main chance party this is, that it will just say anything to get support. And they were rejected as well. And to see people like Chuka Amuna, who left the Labour Party to join the Liberal Democrats, lose his seat, is testament in many ways, because he's a personification of the political class, that the people are not having it anymore. And I like to say I'm not a supporter of Johnson, but at least now, because his career will be over if it didn't happen, we are going to get some sort of Brexit. Whereas if he hadn't won, we'd have got no sort of Brexit.
From what I've seen of this election, it's probably the most hate-filled election I've ever seen.
It's polarising society, exactly what
it's been extraordinary. And as someone who's sort of been involved in various things, from it, like playing football with my mates to going to watch Derby County play football, ice hockey, music, whatever, I've managed on my social media at least to have quite a large range of different people from different aspects of, and so you're seeing everyone else's opinions, and the hatred is extraordinary. And certainly from the Labour side, because a lot of friends that support Labour, it's they're not listening at all, and they don't want to listen, and they're in this little bubble of social media where they only really follow or are friends with generally people that agree with them.
Yes,
So it's an absolute echo chamber. Yeah.
View on society.
And the amount of times I've seen over the last few days, people posting things like, if you vote Tory, if you're going to vote Tory, unfriend me now. And these are people that they've probably been friends with since they were in primary school, probably been friends with for 30 odd years. Unfriend me now, I don't want anything to do with you. And they don't realise that that's the attitude which is costing them. Because all that's going to happen is these people that they're calling racist or saying unfriend me, they're still going to vote Tory. They're just not going to tell you.
Yep.
So then when the result comes in...
You know, I heard a line on American television yesterday where people are talking about the Democrats and what they're doing in relation to Trump. And they said that, the Democrats been obsessed with Trump and stopping Trump and impeaching Trump. But the line was, what they don't realize is they are the reason Trump was elected.
Yeah, exactly.
And so it's the same with what you've just described. This was not overwhelmingly, in terms of Labour voters up to this point, voting Tory, because the Tories don't have their wider interests at heart, of course. It was voting for Brexit.
Exactly.
That's what
It was a fourth referendum after the after the European elections and the last election.
Exactly that.
Yes, in many ways, Jay. People, the political class has been saying we need a people's vote. Well, we've just had one.
We just massively had one.
Exactly.
Vote for Brexit, and a vote for being listened to and respected when democracy speaks. Democracy in a very clear way, not democracy voting for a party and then they do what they like, but a clear in or out. You couldn't get clearer. And that was beyond any party political version of democracy. And yet it was being ignored. And they looked at it and they said, okay, here we are, the ignored working class of Britain. We've got no party that represents us. We voted overwhelmingly to come out of the European Union. So if we vote Labour now, which we always have, what happens to Brexit? Well, it won't happen. What about, Liberal Democrats? Absolutely won't happen. See? And so it's, well, if we want Brexit to happen, there's only one option, and that's Johnson, who has said he will make it happen. So this is the dynamic. The Labour Party and Corbyn have given the natural supporters of the Labour Party, well, the Labour Party before Blair anyway, no choice but either to accept that what they voted for is not going to happen, that's why we're going to vote Labour, or vote Tory for the first time in their lives to make Brexit in some form happen. We don't know what kind of form it's going to be. Not the form that I want, for sure, but some form. And so that, it's no good saying, how can you do that? I'm going to unfriend you. No. Because they give them no choice.
No.
You either accept that Brexit's not going to happen, or you say, well, this is the only chance. And, what's also gone against them and in favour of Johnson is the drama dynamic leading up to this election, and indeed the cause of it being called. And that is that they've watched, sometimes night after bloody night, Johnson, running a minority government then, being opposed at every turn as he tries to get some form of Brexit through. He wanted it, he said, by the 31st of October. So people who voted for Brexit, Labour supporters all their lives who voted for Brexit, have then watched these opposition benches conspiring constantly together, the different parties, to stop Johnson getting it through. they've watched the focal point, because he was leader of the biggest party, opposition party, Jeremy Corbyn, being the focal point of stopping it at every turn. All the manipulation, the speaker, Burko, and his manipulation of parliamentary happenings so that it benefited the ones that wanted to stop Brexit. They've watched this. And in the minds of many people, subconsciously, if not consciously, Johnson took on the form, and, you know, I was going to say, I'm not a supporter of Johnson. I'm not sure I believe anything he says, really. But in their minds, even, like I say, subconsciously, he took on the figure and the part in the drama of being the little guy trying to represent them. And they saw all these opposition parties, including some in the Tories, who were trying to stop him and conspiring against him. And all these things come together. And what it's done, cumulatively, is persuaded a large number of lifelong Labour supporters to do something they never thought they would ever do and would have laughed in your face if you suggested it, and that is to vote for the Conservative Party. But what they've really done is vote for Brexit.
What do you think happens now? So we've seen Johnson come out and say they want to table their Brexit bill next Friday, I believe, to put the wheels in motion to start leaving by the 31st of January. But looking at that bill, there's not really any difference to Theresa May's deal that was fundamentally...
It's not leaving. Not really.
They've just rebadged it.
Yeah, basically.
Yeah, well, you're right. When I talk about voting for Brexit, more accurately, it would be voting for not staying in, as we always have. Because the Brexit that I want would completely disconnect us from any control by the dark suits in Brussels, because, as I've been saying in the books for decade after decade, the European Union is a major vehicle for handing power over hundreds of millions of people in Europe to a tiny cabal via the Brussels bureaucracy. That's what it's there for. So from the moment that the referendum happened, they've ideally wanted to stop it altogether, and failing that, to so dilute it that it becomes Brexit in name only. And the devil will be in the detail from here on of the negotiations with the European Union over the future relationship, and how much of that future relationship involves rules and regulations and laws dictating to what Britain can and cannot do. What I would say, however, is that the dark suits in Brussels will be far from happy. They will be very, very, I think, taken aback to an extent, but also really concerned now that they have lost some of the power they had before. Because what you had before this election was a minority Johnson government with no power to get anything through the Houses of Parliament. And you had the majority of the opposition parties, the great overwhelming majority, wanting to stop it, or at least massively dilute it, which meant that they had, the dark suits, a majority in Parliament on their side. It was an alliance. And of course, when you're negotiating with the dark suits, and they have the knowledge that they have the support of, at that time, the majority of people in the Houses of Parliament, the House of Commons, well, House of Parliament, because they have a majority in the House of Lords, then negotiations are are very, very one-sided, because the dark suits think, well, we don't have to give anything because we can't lose. But now, with this around 80-seat majority, Johnson can get basically anything through he wants, which I don't think is a good thing. A majorities that big are not good, because things can go through that are actually not what should be going through in terms of benefit of the majority of people in this country. But from the Brexit point of view, he now has an unassailable majority, which means that anything he pushes through will go through. You might have some Tory rebels, doesn't matter, with a majority that size. So he goes into the negotiation far, far stronger than he did before, where he had no strength at all, really. But the question then comes, and it's a relevant one: to what extent can you trust Boris Johnson? I don't think very much, personally. I think he's a politician that says a lot of what would benefit him in the short term, in terms of support, etc. And it certainly worked with Brexit, but it was Brexit that did this, rather than Johnson the individual. And we'll see now how straight and honest Johnson is in terms of Brexit, by where he takes it from here, and what he accepts from the dark suits and what he will not accept.
What part do you think the Brexit Party played? So obviously they've not won a seat, but they took a lot of votes, especially up north. And I did wonder before the election. I didn't think they'd win a seat, but I did think they could be the kingmakers, and I do wonder if they've played an important role.
Well, I think again, I'm no supporter of Nigel Farage in many of his views and attitudes, but without Nigel Farage, there would be no Brexit, no chance. No. There'd have been a Brexit referendum. There'd be none of it. So, although we don't agree with a lot of what people say about other things, we have to be surely honest and fair, and say that without Farage, there would be no Brexit. And I think you're right. I've not seen the figures yet, because we're talking here with one or two of the results still to come in. But any vote for the Brexit Party in the urban centres of Britain would be a vote that would overwhelmingly, not necessarily every one, but overwhelmingly would otherwise have gone to the Labour Party. Because what you have is a lot of people in the urban centres of Britain, in the cities, that even with Brexit at stake, they wouldn't have been able, for historical reasons and ideological reasons maybe, to have voted Tory. They just oh no, I can't vote Tory. I can't. I can see my father now. I was brought up in a staunch Labour household in Leicester. My father voted Tory. You must be joking. But of course, we're in different times in this election because of Brexit. But a lot of people, like my father, even if they supported Brexit, they would say, can't vote Tory. So what the Brexit Party did was give a place for them to go. And by going there, they didn't go to Labour. No. So Labour lost votes they would normally have, which has helped the Tories.
In some regions, it was around about, I was just trying to find the exact figures then, but I didn't want to be clicking on my laptop, but around about 15%, some of them.
Brexit Party.
Yeah. And they didn't win. But like Dad says, if you're taking 15% of the vote off Labour, that's good night Vienna, isn't it?
Yeah, pretty much.
Yeah. So it was good that the Brexit Party gave those people that would never vote Tory but want Brexit a place to go, and that, you see, you could see it coming, guys, couldn't you? You could see it bloody coming.
Yeah.
because of this choice that people had for Brexit or for all the opposition parties to the Tories. You vote for any of them, you're voting against Brexit, except with the Brexit Party. And so they forced them into that choice. And, you know, you look at Corbyn, and like I said earlier, he's been backtracking and being absorbed into the political class of the Labour Party and the Blairites who still worship the god of Tony Blair. And, you know, people are looking now, because there is a change going on. There is a psychological, perceptual change going on, both sides of the Atlantic. People are looking for someone who, or people, who they may not totally agree with on everything, well, who agrees with everyone on everything, but at least they're standing up for what they appear to believe in. They're not prevaricating, they're not compromising to dilute what they stand for some political end or perceived political end. Actually, in Corbyn's sense, it was political suicide that he was doing. And so what Corbyn managed to do by constantly being absorbed back into the belly of the beast, the Blairite Labour Party, is he alienated his natural supporters, including many who joined the Labour Party when just because he got elected and what he said. And on that side, he was alienating them. And on the other side, he had the Blairite Labour Party that no matter what he did, they would always oppose him and try to unseat him and undermine him. So what would have happened, he might now ask, if he had stood up and said, this is what I stand for. I've been in favour of getting out of the EU all my political career. And I'm not now, as leader of the Labour Party, where I've been given such a massive amount of support to become leader, I'm not going now to back off from that. Now, if people in the Labour Party want to vote for stopping Brexit, well, that's their choice. But me, I'm going to stand by what I believe, and that is, one, we should come out of the EU, and two, 17.4 million people, great numbers of which are our natural supporters, are not going to be ignored and abused and waved aside by me. He could also have said, when the cold, calculated, systematic campaign began to paint him and the Labour Party as anti-Semitic, he could have stood up and said, okay, let me tell you what's happening here. I'm willing to criticize Israel and its treatment of Palestinians, right? So are so many of those who have actually voted for me to be leader. So I am going to go on doing that, because what this campaign of vilification is about is silencing those people in the Labour Party, including myself, who are willing to criticize Israel for its treatment of Palestinians. What did he do? He backed off and backed off and backed off. He allowed Jewish people to be expelled from the Labour Party for anti-Semitism, bizarre or what. And he created a climate of fear by sitting on his hands, zipping his mouth, whereby people in the Labour Party are terrified of saying anything, even mildly, about Israel, because they fear being expelled. And just down the road from you guys now, in Derby, we've had Chris Williamson standing as an independent and losing, as would be expected.
600 votes he got. 600.
Yeah. He got just over 600. It was 635, something like that.
Yeah.
And so they effectively threw him out of the Labour Party, made his position untenable, because he had the audacity to have the opinion of that the Labour Party had got down on its knees far too easily to this vilification over alleged anti-Semitism. And what has that done? That's cost the Labour Party that seat. Because not only did he lose, as I look at the results, so did the Labour Party in that constituency of Derby North.
Yeah.
So
Derby's blue now in its entirety.
And given this area is a predominantly, historically, mining, working class industries, the fact that my constituency mine's Labour actually, you're Tory, Derby North and South are Tory, it's mental.
My village that I live in is in the Amber Valley, and which was decimated by Thatcher, and they're Tory. Yeah. It's insane. But it's Brexit.
Yeah.
But it's Brexit. We voted to leave, and this is the mad thing. I've tried to get this point across to various people who say it's not all about Brexit. It's not all about you. Well, first of all, it is. One, because there's a democratic vote and it's been ignored. So if you're going to ignore that, then every other vote after that becomes nonsense.
Brexit's a symbol.
Yeah, and so it is important. So to get that out of the way first of all, and if Labour had stuck to their 2017 manifesto where they would honour the result, then that would nullify get Brexit done by the Tories. It would nullify it completely, and then you could focus on the NHS, then you could focus on everything else, homelessness, the selling off of public, services, and I think Labour would have walked it.
Yeah, well, this is where the problem is.
They'd have walked it.
People always look outwards. The Labour Party and the Liberal Democrats are looking at, I saw Swinson's speech after she lost, nationalism's on the rise.
Yeah, it's everyone else's fault.
Yeah, it's
everyone else's fault. Everyone's a racist.
Look internally. Clearly, if you're losing to Boris Johnson in the same way that the Democrats are losing to Donald Trump, look in the fucking mirror. You're clearly not saying what people want. Exactly.
But it's everyone else's fault. And I've seen it, friends of mine, good people too, to be fair. Today, they're blaming the mainstream media. They're blaming the manufactured anti-Semitism crisis, which I don't think made difference. Certainly not that much difference.
No.
And the fact that all the people that did that coup have basically all been voted out shows that people don't take it that seriously anyway. And none of them are looking inward. No. None of them are going, right, what have we done? Well, we've patronised everyone. We've called everyone a racist. We've called everyone thick for 3 years, and they've stuck their finger up at us. That's weird, isn't it?
And what happened in America? Exactly the same
thing. Exactly.
How much of a factor do you think this that Johnson's stance compared to May's stance in 2017, where May was kind of doing a Corbyn, wasn't she? Really, she was on the fence. She was here.
Well, May was an ardent Remainer.
Whereas Johnson's literally nailed his colours to the mast. Whether you believe what he says or not, he's as you've already said, his career's over if Brexit doesn't happen because of how much he's nailed to it. How much do you think that made the factor? Because May won 319 seats in 2017, and it looks like the Tories are going to get about 370 this time.
Yeah.
How much of an impact do you think that's made? Him saying, right, we're not on the fence, this is it.
Well, a massive impact because of what I said earlier. He became the focus figure of Brexit. He made himself that. And like I say, when night after night people were watching the opposition parties and Labour Party they would normally vote for constantly conspire, manipulate to undermine every effort Johnson was making to get some sort of Brexit through, he became the figure that represented Brexit. Whether it turns out that that was right or not, we'll see. But he personified Brexit, and psychologically, he in many ways then personified them and their desire to have Brexit happen. And because you're right, we've got political parties that are so inward looking, so within the bubble, they don't know what's going on in the rest of the country. They don't. This is why when Trump won with the working class support, and as Johnson has won with far more working class support than possibly any Tory leaders ever had. People look at that, the commentators, the media are also in the same bubble as the political class, and they say, what a shock.
Yeah, we didn't see that coming.
It's a shock to them because they don't understand what's happening around the country. One thing I would say, which I think is sad, and he is a casualty of this Labour complete misreading of its own natural support, that Dennis Skinner, again, not far from you guys, has lost his seat. And he's been an MP for the best part of, almost 50 years. And he is a guy who has stood for what he believes in. He's never been in government and always been a backbencher. But he's someone who stood up for what he believes in, and I think it's sad that he's gone, because he was a brilliant constituency MP, helping people, to the extent that the Conservative guy who beat him in this election made a very nice tribute to him and said, in all, going around the streets of the constituency, Bolsover, it was difficult to find anyone who at some point Dennis Skinner hadn't helped. So I think it's sad that he's gone. But the Labour Party brought this about.
Yeah, absolutely. And another thing that I think has not helped the Labour Party is also in terms of the media, who they've put themselves in bed with your likes of Owen Jones and people like that. I think people are sick and tired generally of this kind of woke attitude and this offended attitude and this political correct attitude, that actually Boris Johnson, who is basically a gobshite, who says rude things and obnoxious things a lot, when the media puts that out and says, oh, Johnson said this, expecting a backlash against that people are going to go, oh God, that's outrageous, people actually quite like it. Because when you're living in an easily offended world, the fact that you've got someone out there who's sticking their finger up at it, and Johnson's not stupid, he'll know that, he will say these things on purpose, and I think that works for him.
Just like Trump does.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, you picked on something, Gaz, very, very important and very relevant to what's happened in this election and what's happened in general. I've talked for a long time about the vast difference in attitudes between those that dominate the microphones, the shrill voices, the political class and the activists, and the general population. All you hear through the microphones, because the media, of course, censor on the basis of political correctness. And what is political correctness? This is the narrative we want you to believe, and we're going to abuse you if you stand outside of it or say anything outside of it. So you are absolutely right. Same with Trump and with Johnson. When they say things that are not politically correct, and there was some interchanges in the last days of Parliament before this election between him and Labour Party people in the Houses of Parliament. And you're right again, the response they thought they would get by pushing this is, Johnson's horrible. But again, like Trump, he stood for something in their minds that is also extremely relevant to what has happened. And that was, he was talking outside of the ever decreasing, ever squeezing box of political correctness. And when you go through your life, increasingly, if you want to keep your job, and you're going through mental gymnastics and pre-thought preparation for words, so that you don't say the wrong thing from a political correctness point of view. And of course, the number of things you can say that are wrong by that criteria and just grow by the day, to have someone in the public eye to stick the finger up to that and just say things that you're not supposed to say is a very compelling aspect of this, because people are sick and tired, not just of being ignored over Brexit and ignored over their economic situations and struggles. They are sick and tired of being told what to say, what they can say, what they can't say. They're sick and tired of even being told what they should think. And so anything that represents a challenge to that is something that's obviously going to attract their support. We are going to see, however, whether this political correct society, in terms of legislation and change, continues at the same pace under Johnson, and whether his actions match his words. And you pick up on something else that's so desperately important for people to see, and that is this woke mentality. The Democrats, see, this is where choice has got in politics. You don't choose someone you want anymore. You choose someone you perceive, and a party you perceive to be less bad than the others. That's the choice. And so you look at Trump and you look at the Democrats in America, and you know that I absolutely don't support Trump and have great reservations about him, and I think what's behind him is not what people think is behind him. I don't see him as a rebel at all, and he's owned by Israel so demonstrably. So he's no maverick, but he plays the part, often very well, of being one. And because he plays the part, he too appeals to that constituency by appearing to be, and I'm sure he is in many ways, genuinely politically incorrect. And people will look at, and there's a lot of Democrats looking at this, and this is absolutely a metaphor for the Tories and Labour. A lot of Democrats who are the old left, the old left, ironically, that went on marches for freedom of speech and that campaigned against the power of corporations, they now see, quite rightly, the Democrats as being against free speech, because there's been an inversion, a takeover, and being in bed with corporations, not least in Silicon Valley. And so when you look at this coming American election, there's a great constituency of people that would normally vote for the Democrats, but can see the tidal wave of political correctness and outright Marxism, centralized imposition on the entire population. They can see the southern border, what there is of it, of America, being basically opened. And they are like people who voted Labour in Britain all their lives. I can't vote for that. So if I'm going to stop that, who do I vote for? Well, I've got one alternative to stop that, and that's Trump. And this is a dynamic going on there big time. And some Democrats are starting to realize that and starting to try to roll back in public this political correct insanity that they are spewing out all the time. And if you look at the Labour manifesto for this election and the rhetoric from people like Diane Abbott,
oh God,
and you don't start me, and then you look at the Liberal Democrats and the rhetoric of their leader until now, Joe Swinson, and what would have happened had they got into power at this election is that there would have been a tidal wave of political correctness and woke, brackets, Marxist, which is a political structure philosophy created by what is now called the 1%, ironically. Marxism is the system of the people, government of the people. Are you having a laugh? That's what you would have got. And you know, I say it again. The political class look at the working class, the people that don't have a lot of money and just work and work to get by. They see them as uneducated. They never went to Oxford like me. Not very bright. And basically just vote fodder. But actually, a great number of the so-called uneducated working class are very bright and very streetwise, and becoming more so about the ways of the world and what's going on. And as a result of that, these reflex action political support for one party alone, they are starting to break down. They're starting to diminish, and they're starting to see the shades of grey within the black and white. And if you meet most people in the supermarket or in the street and you have a chat to them, then the last thing they want is what wokeism wants. And with the left being hijacked in America and in Britain by this woke PC mentality, that's another reason why people start to withdraw their support for parties representing that, because they don't want it. We have to face the fact, I would suggest, people who are naturally of the left, old Labour, liberal in its true sense, which is freedom of speech, freedom of lifestyle, freedom of opinion. That mentality that drove the old left has been hijacked. It's been hijacked by billionaires like Soros, who fund to the tune of tens of billions these activist organizations that are driving wokeness. And therefore, when they say, I'm going to vote for a party of the left, it's no longer the left that you perceive the left to be. It's been hijacked. And so what you have in Europe in the same way is people who would normally have voted for the left have seen this hijacking. They don't support wokeness either. They have seen how parties of the left, not least in places like France, have once again ignored the working class. This is why you've had the ongoing yellow vest protests. It's what it's all about. Same thing. It's happening everywhere. They have been attracted to vote for what they thought they never would again, which are these nationalist parties. They're seeing their communities transformed by unfettered immigration, same in America. And they're seeing places that they have known all their lives fundamentally changing. And the left, the woke, is saying we want more of it. And don't let's diminish the part that played too in the abandonment of Labour.
No, the thing as well with Labour on that point you just made, they've sort of pinned their colours to the mast, which was the NHS. That was their primary thing, yep. Which is massively important. But like you say, because they want open borders, basically they want more immigration. You're then throwing money at the NHS while increasing immigration, which puts more strain on the NHS.
They want more housing, same principle.
Yeah, so people with a brain went, well, it's amazing that you're focusing on the NHS, and it's amazing that you want to make more money available for it, but you've basically just snookered yourself with your other bit of your manifesto, which doesn't add up.
No.
And we've spoke about it before, the fact that the British population is diminishing. It's lowering. We're having less children, basically. Yeah. So it's becoming less. Yet the NHS is having more people every year. Well, then that's obviously, immigration's obviously playing a part on that. You can't deny it. It's basic maths.
No.
And you want more immigration, so you want to put more stress on the NHS, but you're going to save it with money. It's madness.
No, the NHS is a massive one, because it's more people are using it because more people are ill, because diets are crap, more people are coming to the country, so there's more people to get ill and crap. But that kind of ties into the question I was going to ask, which is between now and 2024, which will be the next scheduled election, what does the left, or the Labour, Liberal Democrats, what do they have to do? Because at the moment, well, they have to look in the mirror, but they won't. What do they have to do? So Corbyn said he won't stand in the next election. So what do you see happening now at the Labour Party?
Well, Corbyn says that he won't stand at the next election, so there's obviously going to be a leadership change. I suspect that it will move probably closer. We don't know, we'll see, but probably closer to a more Blairite.
Yeah, Thornbury, Starmer, they're the people putting their hats in the ring already.
Yeah, but the thing is that both the Democrats and the left in Britain and Europe, I say the left and Democrats in the same, absolutely not relevant anymore, but what it was traditionally before, they need to look in the mirror and realize that the things that have happened that they don't like, they are responsible for. But they won't.
No, of course they won't.
They won't, because this woke mentality is incredibly narcissistic. And it's based on I am right. End of story. Facts not necessary, by the way. I am right. Now, if I am right, then anyone who says anything different to me must be wrong. And if they're wrong, then there's no point in protecting their freedom of speech to say something that's wrong, because I am right. This is how the whole free speech thing goes. But also, in terms of looking in the mirror, what they say is, I am right, and so people who've not voted for me or my party or my ideology are by definition wrong. It's not me that's wrong, I'm right. It's them that's wrong. Now, why are they wrong? It must be because they're stupid. They must be concerned about mass immigration because they're racist, and so on and so forth. And this process just goes on. And you see it in the Democratic Party even more clearly, where this New York congresswoman, who's the woke of wokeness, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, has basically hijacked the, quote, ideology of the Democratic Party, and older Democrats are being pulled towards her just to get to stay credible within a party that's been taken over by wokeness. So the point is, wokeness does not do retrospection. It does not do self-questioning and self-analysis. And so if the left, which in its true sense represents fairness and justice for all people, if they're going to take their party back, then they're going to take that position in politics back, they have to take their way of seeing leftness back from wokeness. Yeah. They have to. And that means they have to grow a backbone and a pair and start calling this wokeness out from the left. Instead of when the right calls wokeness out, reacting by saying the right are just Nazis, they have to realize that they've been hijacked.
Yeah.
They have to start calling this wokeness out from within the left, because if they don't, then wokeness will prevail and go on doing what it's doing now, and where this has now led.
Yeah. There was a funny Tucker Carlson quite a while ago. Obviously in America they say the word liberals, they use it wrongly, they mean
the Democrats.
They mean the Democrats. But when he said if liberals are so fucking smart, why do they get beat all the time?
But what they'll do, I think, is I'm waiting for it to pop up that Russia was involved in this election. I'm waiting for it. For me, obviously, Brexit is a massive thing, and that, I believe, is the reason they've lost, among other things. But I think that's the main reason. But also, they've alienated working class voters, not only through Brexit, but through a lot of their stances, because they see social media as reality. Yeah. So like when Dad mentions earlier, when you talk to people on the street, when you talk to people in the pub, in the shop, they don't do that. They're looking at social media, and social media is pushing the whole gender nonsense. It's woke.
Climate
change, the whole shebang. And what did, and I remember it, Dad actually mentioned it in a video cast at the time, when Labour started charging BAME people, so black, Asian, minority ethnicity people, less to attend a Corbyn rally than they charged white people, because they thought that was fighting racism when it was actually just being massively racist. They lost a hell of a lot of people by doing stuff like that. Yeah. I mean, I looked at that as just...
it's racist.
I'm scratching my head at the time going, are you being serious?
Yeah.
That's literally racist. It's,
Well, the thing you notice very clearly and very early on about wokeness, which has hijacked the left, is that it is an absolute inversion of everything. And what I mean by that is that everything it rails against, it itself does. So there's an agenda, a very clear agenda, which 99% of wokeness doesn't realize it's being played like a stringed instrument, has no idea. And it's the agenda of the 1%. And that's very easy to explain, as I have in the books. And so the agenda wants an end to freedom of speech because it doesn't want the agenda to have the ability to be challenged by alternative facts and opinion. So you look at wokeness, it's against free speech, in effect. It wants censorship all over the place. And because this is the agenda wants censorship all over the place through its corporations in Silicon Valley. And what it's done now is create an alliance between billionaires and billionaire corporations and wokeness, which is masquerading as the left. And so this is why the old left used to campaign against the power of corporations, and the new left, called wokeness, is in bed with corporations. So when your Facebooks and your Googles and your Twitters and all these other Silicon Valley giants censor people who disagree with the woke mentality, wokeness cheers.
Yeah.
Whereas the old left would have been in the street. And, revolutions always eat their children. And what I mean by that is, if you look at any revolution, Russian Revolution, any of them, they use large numbers of the population, in this case wokeness, to achieve the end of overthrowing the previous society. And once that transition has taken place and the new power structure is in place because of the work of in this case, the woke, then that power structure, once in place, doesn't need woke anymore. So now it comes out in its true persona, and it targets the people that brought it to power. And so what you're having now is not just the so-called right being censored, but more people of the genuine left are being censored. And within the woke, politically correct sexual hierarchy, where feminism once was at the top, now you have feminists being castigated and attacked and abused because of their views on transgender, and for instance how it's destroying increasingly women's sport by having people in male bodies claiming to be women able to take part in women's sport, and so you see this progression. And the 1% are manipulating the woke to demand everything that it wants to create this totalitarian society. And then once it's in place, the woke will be the targets of the totalitarian society. And it's like watching a car crash in slow motion. The point being, however, that I Am Right is the only show in town, and every perspective of wokeness, the new left, fake left, comes from that perspective, I am right. And until that is broken, you see this is another point I'll make about the election. You see this in the climate change hoax, which wokeness, of course, worships the religion of climate change. And climate change is just another 1% elite scam to justify a totalitarian centralized world state to, quote, control from the center so everything is done and everyone has to do what we say is necessary to save the planet. So those in Extinction Rebellion woke, Ocasio-Cortez with her New Green Deal or Green New Deal in America woke, are pressing the elite agenda for global centralization of power to save the planet. And if you look at this election, well, the three parties, well, the SNP too, but the three parties that are pushing the fact that they will go crazy, in effect, in tackling climate change, i.e. transforming society as the 1% wants and centralizing power, are the Labour Party, the Liberal Democrats, and the Greens. Now, where was the support for them? You know, the shrill voices who dominate discourse in the media are saying we're all going to die imminently. Oh, we've got just a few years to save the world. Is that the same few years you said we had before, which have now passed? Oh, no, there's a few years. And so there's this hysteria, mass hysteria, in the wokeness and the political class of the media and politics that is, and yet you talk to so many people away from the microphones, the so-called people in the street and the supermarkets, and they go, I think it's a load of rubbish, mate.
Yeah.
And they voted on that basis in this election because the shrill mass hysteria climate change parties have suffered rejection. That you would think that the Green Party would be gaining more and more MPs. Oh, we're all going to die. Where's the Green Party? But they've been left with Caroline Lucas, who wins in Brighton because she has a big structure there, built up over a long period, which gets her support. There's a lot of woke people.
I love a lot of woke people in Brighton.
In Brighton, yeah. So she gets in, but where's the others?
Yeah. No, exactly. I think the thing, what I've seen on social media particularly, which I know is a bubble, but Labour and Green and all these other party basically activists saying how great this is what we've got now with the Tories, and they always mention the erosion of freedom of speech. And it makes me laugh, because I think, like, from personal experience, obviously with your talks, Dad, I've never seen any Tories outside.
No.
I've never seen any Tories getting hold of the council trying to get them to stop it. And it's always Labour councillors that pressure and try and pull the plug. Yep. And the fact that they're claiming that the Tories will erode freedom of speech shows an unbelievable lack of awareness on their own part.
The only councillor that we've ever had that's got involved and actually said, you know what, this is going ahead, was a Liberal Democrat councillor, wasn't it, in Watford? Liberal Democrat mayor, sorry.
Was it?
Yeah. Labour ones are always pressuring venues, like Kate Green did in Manchester.
Yeah, and in Norwich.
Yeah, Norwich too.
I mean, the point is, and that's a point I've made in the trigger. Whenever you Jay, because you do it. Whenever you book a theatre or a venue that's owned by a Labour council, for my talks, well, you're wasting your time and effort, because it's going to be pulled.
Yeah, don't bother now.
All it takes is a call from the anti-Semitism industry and the protection racket, protecting Israel from criticism, not protecting Jewish people from criticism, protecting Israel from criticism, the far-right government. That one phone call and the Labour Council will pull it. The Labour councils in Britain are extraordinary destroyers of freedom of speech. You've had conferences or meetings about 9/11 being cancelled by Labour councils. So it's wokeness and anything that supports wokeness that is the danger to freedom of speech. And this is another point in politics. Like I say, we don't have the choice of voting for what we want. We have the choice of voting for the least unlike what we want, which is a completely different thing. But one way to look at it is to look at the natural constituency of support for a particular party. So, or person in terms of Trump. So, okay, this network of control, this cult that I write about, has infiltrated all parties. It controls Trump to a very large extent, not least through Israel. But these people have to get elected, at least at the moment. And so you look at the people they have to attract to support, they would naturally attract, and without it they can't get elected. And if you look therefore at natural Trump supporters, you'll find that they are absolutely against the erosion and destruction of freedom of speech. You look at most Tories, whereby I would disagree with vast amounts of what they say, but they overwhelmingly also don't want, or Tory supporters I mean, don't want freedom of speech eroded. And so what you've got with these parties who have that natural constituency of support is they are much more reluctant to openly destroy freedom of expression because of the electoral consequences of doing that. And it doesn't mean it doesn't happen, but it means it cannot happen so quickly if they're going to hold that constituency. And they have to pay at least lip service to supporting freedom of expression. Those who have been taken over by wokeness do not have to do that. They think, at least, because wokeness supports the censorship and deletion of freedom of speech of anything and anyone that contradicts I am right. And in this way, again, a lot of natural Labour supporters through their lives who are not woke they don't want to see freedom of speech deleted either, which is another reason for withdrawing from the Labour Party, support from the Labour Party, for the Labour Party. And so all these things we're talking about, they're all elements, they're all strands in this whole that led to the election of Trump and has led to this landslide victory for Johnson.
I think we've covered pretty much everything there, haven't we?
Yeah, very interesting. I actually think, though, in terms of the leadership now of Labour, because they're pushing Thornbury, Starmer, people like that, like Dad said, Blairite wing, they're the reason they lost, because Corbyn pandered to them. So the idea that them coming in as and taking over the leadership will give anything but the same result for probably the next decade is madness. I think Labour are finished for some time now.
Yeah, I'd agree.
Well, they've got a long way to come back.
Yeah.
And, we shouldn't underestimate that. This is a worse result in terms of seats than Michael Foot, as leader of the Labour Party, got when he went up against Margaret Thatcher. And I can tell you, because I lived through it, that was one of the worst, possibly the worst election campaign that the Labour Party has ever run with Michael Foot. And their manifesto for that election was described by Labour insiders as the longest suicide note in history. So here we have Corbyn, who has actually ended up with fewer seats than Foot did. And it took a long time to build that support back after that Foot debacle. And I met Michael Foot, and when I was on Newsnight, BBC current affairs program, a long time ago, and he was a nice bloke. Michael Foot was a genuine bloke, and if you sat him down quietly away from the mob, the Labour Party mob of those that control it, including Momentum, you would probably think that, Jeremy Corbyn, he's a nice enough bloke, and his heart's in the right place. But they've both made the same error of completely misreading the public mood of the time.
Yeah, massively.
And that happens when you look only inward and not outward, and when you talk but don't listen. And the working class people of Britain, in very large numbers, have spoken, as they spoke at the referendum, and they've spoken in the same way. Times have changed. We ain't having it anymore. And on that basis, much as I don't support Tory governments, it's very encouraging, because this is just another step on the road to dismantling the power of the political class over tens and tens of millions of people.
Perfect. I think that's a lovely place to end.
Amen.
Thank you very much for coming on. It's been cool to chat to you for the first time on here.
Yeah, cheers, Dad.
All right, speak to you later.
Thanks.
That was David Icke / Dad there.
You went full smashing nicey then with your voice. You went proper 80s radio DJ. That was David Icke with...
yeah, I did, yeah.
Yeah. It's good though, it works. It's radio voice.
Well, this isn't radio, there's a camera.
It's a podcast.
Three, actually. That was interesting. We actually spoke a lot more than I thought we would.
Yeah, I like chatting to Dad anyway. So it's one of them, innit? We've just done it with some cameras on.
Love me.
That was true.
Yeah, no, that was good. I really enjoyed that. There's it's because all three of us come from a pretty central view in terms of we don't follow a particular party.
Yeah.
I think you can be objective, whereas we've had this conversation before. When you're subjective and you support a particular party, you'll justify things.
Well, it's tribal, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's the funny thing. I've had quite a lot of it over the whole period, because I didn't vote, because I had no one to vote for.
No, me neither.
And that whole people died so you could... No, they didn't. They died so you can make a choice. If there is no choice, they didn't die for that. So it was absolute nonsense.
Voting for somebody you don't support is a choice.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. What's the point in me going out in the rain to put an X next to someone I don't want to vote for? Ridiculous. Yeah. Anyway, So I didn't vote, and so I said what would happen to the Labour Party because everyone could see that it was going to happen, and I got stuff for so much, Oh, so you're a Tory supporter, are you? No, I'm not. I don't support anyone. I can't stand the Tories. I'm just making the point that this is what's going to happen.
Yeah, and
this
is where 2016, you had the referendum. The majority of every single party, in terms of their voters, their constituents, voted out pretty much. And apart from the small faction of the Tory party that are behind Johnson and Rees-Mogg and so on, every other party's ignored the fact that happened.
Yeah, exactly.
So they can't grasp, even now, the fact that you could be a Brexiteer and also supporting the NHS and as kind of a left-wing socialist agenda. They're incompatible as far as they're concerned, but they're not, because me and you would be examples of two people that would probably do that.
Yeah, exactly.
And it's as we've said there. I think for me, the Labour Party are finished. I mean,
they finished for some time, yeah, and they had such an opportunity when he first came into power as leader. It's such an opportunity.
Yeah, massive.
And they've just spaffed it up the wall.
Massive opportunity. I think that
And it's I feel bad for people like Toto we've had on, like real good people, who now have
Yeah, I'll make a prediction. If
10 more years of Tory.
If nothing changes, and I'm talking about a fundamental change. Your daughter is 18 months? My child's not born yet. We won't see a Labour government before they can vote. I'll show you that prediction now. Unless anything changes, 20 years.
Well, something will have to change. I mean, I think Labour are done for 10 years.
At least done for 10 years.
Yeah.
Because look who you've had since Cameron won in that first election. You've had Miliband. Obviously, Brown went up against him. You had Miliband. Then you've had Corbyn, and they've said three completely different things, but people aren't supporting it because the fundamental core of the Labour Party is rotten. Yeah, and also the fact that you would look at what Corbyn says and you'd say, I believe that, I agree with that, I agree with this. But then when you see him flip-flop on Brexit and you see him flip-flop and pander to the anti-Semitism smears, you would look at that and think, well, you've got a spine of a whitebait. Why on earth do I think that if you become Prime Minister, you'll fight for me? Because you won't even fight for Chris Williamson, who's supposed to be your friend. And that's why the few debates that I watched between him and Johnson, they tried to make trust a big thing. And obviously I think, because they're so ignorant, they tried to make that a positive for Corbyn. And Johnson, can he be trusted? He said this, he said that. But standing up for something, saying something, and then not backing down when you receive some opposition, that's trust as well. Yeah, of course it is. And Corbyn has shown that he can't be trusted because he's just got a spine of jelly, as you just said. Yeah, he's tried to pander to too many people, and he's also tried to placate people that they don't want. They want him out, and they wanted him out anyway. The blowout. So he was pandering to them, but why would you pander to people because they're never going to be happy? It's never going to be enough. They'll be delighted with this election. Of course they will. Jess Phillips going on there going, I'm really sad for my blah, because she's a professional. I can't stand her. She couldn't give a shit. She caused it. Yeah. She's one of the people that caused it. Stabbing him. I'll stab him in the front. Yeah, well, you just have. Well, it's the principle of the similarities between the US elections and our elections the last few years. So, for me, Bernie Sanders and Corbyn are the same principle. They're two career politicians. They've been around for a long time, that have both pandered and backed down from what they really believe in. And if you're not going to stand up for what you believe in, I think Sanders was 74 when he got stitched up in the last election by Clinton and the delegates and so on. When the fuck are you going to? Yeah, and then he endorsed her afterwards. It's insane. And he lost a huge amount of his base from doing that as well. I don't think he'll win again this time. No, I don't think he will either. Corbyn, the same principle. If you're not going to stand up for what you think, when are you going to? Exactly. How old are you? Exactly. If you're allowing Jewish people to be kicked out of your party because of anti-Semitism, that is just insanity. Absolutely. To me. And like Dad touched on Dennis Skinner, I do feel very sorry for Dennis Skinner. I think part of the reason he lost as well was the fact that he had a hip replacement and he wasn't canvassing because he couldn't. No. So he wasn't out. I mean, a lot of people were out. I played a show up there a couple of weekends ago. There were a lot of people out on his behalf, but it's not him. It's not the same. Me coming to your house and saying vote for Dennis isn't the same as Dennis coming around and saying I helped your nan out 20 years ago or whatever. So I think that played a part. But also, what was staggering was because Bolsover was like 70% out. It was a massive amount of people voted out. Yeah. When the Tories tried to pass a bill that was Brexit related in terms of implementing it, and Labour, Corbyn, they all undermined it and went against it and wouldn't let Johnson get it through, Dennis Skinner voted with the Tories. Yep. Because and the outrage that he got from Labour supporters
was that he was a sellout to the. This is a guy that's been Labour for nearly 50 years in Parliament. And they just went for him because what he was doing was actually fighting for his constituents who voted out. And that's another example of Labour just not getting it.
But how many MPs? This is where I think proportional representation is the way forward. You asked a question to me the other day when I said about this. How would the different constituencies work and who where? I don't think it works now because Berger, perfect example. She was an MP in Liverpool. She's not from Liverpool. She was airlifted in because it was a safe seat. Yeah, exactly. They didn't support her, and now she's gone and stood in what she thought backfired, didn't it? Was another safe seat for the Liberal Democrats and finished in Golders Green. What does she know about that area? What does she know about the struggle people are going through in that area? Which is very different to the struggle people are going to be going through in Liverpool.
Exactly.
Those industries that have been decimated under the last few governments.
Yeah.
The manufacturing industries and the transport industries and so on. And it doesn't work now. How many of the MPs are actually from the area they represent? How many actually care about that area?
Exactly. And how many of them have spent any time there?
Yeah. How many know the names of the people that they've been? I know Dillido lives at number 54. He voted for me. He's voted for me since 1970. I guarantee someone like Dennis Skinner would know.
Of course he would. Of course he would.
And then that's what a real MP is.
Yeah.
You go to Parliament with the mandate of what your constituency wants you to do. If they want you to vote for a bill, your opinion shouldn't matter. If you're an ardent Remainer, but you're in a constituency that's 70% out, you vote out when it comes to.
Of course you do, because you're there to represent the people.
Yeah,
exactly.
It's not your opinion.
Yeah, and I agree with you on that. I think you should have, and the Isle of Wight's the same with Sealy. Sealy's not an Isle of Wighter at all.
No,
it spends hardly any time there, but I think you should be from there, and I think you should be elected by your fellow men and women to represent, and you go there as take the Isle of Wight as an example. You grew up on the Isle of Wight, you're from the Isle of Wight, your family's on the Isle of Wight, your friends are on the Isle of Wight, went to school there, you work there. This is another thing, none of them ever had any freaking jobs.
No.
They've never had a struggle. They went to university, did a political degree probably, and then went bang, got
Career
smashed into.
Yeah,
and people say about Corbyn. What did Corbyn do before? What did he work as?
Actually, people think because of his background and so on, he actually came from quite a privileged background.
Of course he did. He went to private school.
Yeah,
you know what I mean,
it's
which is fine. I'm not classist. It's fine to go to private school if you can afford to do it. And you think you're going to get a better education. Good on you. I don't have a problem with that. But I also think that you should be from the area.
You need real people.
Yeah, and you should have had to have worked. You should have had to have done an apprenticeship in life, in working, because you're going to represent people that are struggling every day, and you're going to try and work out why they're making the decisions they're making, why they want what they want, when you can't relate to them.
You can't relate to them.
Doesn't make any sense.
It's politics in this country, well, worldwide, but in this country, which we know about, it's not about what the voters think. It's about what do I need to say to get voted in, and then
absolutely.
Like.
And the same goes with the activists. Like with a lot of them are from down south, from privileged backgrounds, and they don't understand why someone in the north would vote the way they vote. Therefore, they must be stupid, or they must be racist.
They must be racist.
Well, no, they just had a different experience to you, mate.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, and you have to accept that. Is what it is.
This country, we've said for a couple of years, we've spoken about them. It's London and then everywhere else.
Yeah, completely.
It's London, the home counties, and then everywhere else.
Yeah, and it's social media, and then everywhere else, and everything else. And it's more divided now than it's ever been. I mean, I'm only 38, so it's not like I've got 70 years of experience. But in my life, I've never known it so divided.
It's polarised, same as America.
Completely, because no one listens to anyone.
No, they don't. The opinions of the voters are irrelevant as far as politicians are concerned, which is the fundamental wrong. If you want to have your opinion on politics, be a political commentator, not a politician.
Exactly.
That's my opinion. Anyway, that's it from the Non-Binary Elephant podcast. Today we have got, next week we'll be back with Anna Rogers.
Yep.
And we are talking about another topic which is fascinating on vaccinations.
A bit vaccinations, but also a bit of 5G, a bit of food, basically what's in our diet and stuff like that, fluoride in the water, basically everything linking kind of. A lot of it is to do with brain toxicity and stuff, and where that's coming from in our everyday lives as well, not just vaccines. So
I'm looking forward to that.
Very important.
I'm looking forward to that, and then we're going to have a couple of weeks off as we recharge some batteries over Christmas, and then we're back in January. We've got a few lined up. The exact order to go. We've got Bradley Nelson coming on. We've got an astrologist from Colorado coming on, which would be fascinating.
We've got Anna Breeze who was a presenter for ITV BBC and then quit the BBC because basically they know about the child abuse going on and they know about the paedophile networks and whatever, and they just brush it under the carpet. and she wasn't having any of it. So that could be pretty explosive interview, to be fair.
Yeah, I'll tell you who I've just thought we can work and try and get on is Chris Williamson, because I think now, given that election's gone by, I think he would actually potentially be willing to say everything that needs to be said, because what's he got to lose now?
Yeah. It depends how he sees his political career now. If he doesn't think he's got one, he will come on and talk to us. If he thinks he's still got one, he will probably look at our surname and give it a wide berth.
Well, we'll see.
But we'll see.
But thanks for watching today. Have a fantastic Christmas, everybody.
Yeah, and Happy New Year.
Bye for now.